Hey everybody, welcome to Chapter 4 in my series of Music Theory for Guitarists. The theme today is major scale melodies. Now hopefully you've watched Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, especially Chapter 2, dealing with a major scale, because this chapter here, Chapter 4, definitely derives from Chapter 2, which is about major scales. So major scale melodies. As you know, the melody of a song is what the singer sings. Or if it's an instrumentalist playing the instrumental part, it's that catchy part that the instrumentalist plays, right? But for our purposes today, let's call the melody what the singer sings, okay? Now, melodies typically are based on major scales. Not all the time, but the vast majority of songs that you and I hear on a regular basis have melodies that are based on major scales. So when we talk about music theory for guitar players, when we talk about scales and major scales in particular, and we talk about how that leads to songs, it's helpful to use the major scale as our premise. Now this is going to be a short video, but a helpful video for those of you who are wrapping your brain around some of these concepts. So here we go. And if you enjoy this video, and I hope you do, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's information down below. And when you're on my channel page, there's a little PayPal box. You can make a donation if you're so inclined, and I appreciate it. Thanks in advance. Okay, let's get down to business. What I wrote down here is the 8 notes of a C major scale. And those are the black letters you see in front of you there. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's your C major scale. Now, in theory, the C major scale goes on to infinity in this direction, higher and higher, as high as the human ear can hear, and as low in this direction as the human ear can hear, right? So those red letters are there to serve the purpose of illustrating how the scale, of course, does continue on with the same pattern. C goes to D, goes to E, and here's a C that goes to D, to E, to F, and so on, okay? Now those red letters are going to be helpful in a minute, so don't forget about those red letters over there. We'll get back to those. But what we have here is the C major scale. Now, for our purposes today, let's assume there's a hypothetical songwriter out there, and the songwriter wakes up in the morning and decides, I'm going to write a song in the key of C. It's probably not how most songwriters operate, but for our purposes right now, let's assume that's how this particular songwriter is going to start his day. Now, when this songwriter decides I'm going to write in the key of C, what they're talking about is they're choosing sort of some parameters. They're choosing some notes to work with. Specifically, if we're talking about the key of C, they're choosing the C major scale to work with. Now, for our purposes right now, we're going to say that this songwriter has now limited himself or herself to those notes right in front of us here. That means they're going to write a song with no flats, no sharps, just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? You can have an extra high F, you can have a C here, you can have this C, but the melody of the song that the songwriter is going to write, the melody of the tune, what the singer is going to sing, is some combination, some sequence of that group of notes right there, okay? Now, when the songwriter writes a song, the melody can jump all over the place. The song might begin with a singer singing an E note, and it might jump up to a G note. It might move back down to a C, it might move up to a B, all over the place, okay? Of course, there are zillions of songs in the world, right? Now, before we wrap up today, I'm going to show you some melodies that are based on a C major scale, but that actually go in the order of the scale as written here, okay? You'll see what I mean in a minute. But, you know, most songs out there, even if they are based on a major scale, which many melodies are based on major scales, they jump around quite a bit. The singer doesn't literally sing the notes in this order, except for the examples I'm going to show you. Okay, so what we have here is a major scale. We're going to create a melody from the major scale. By the way, before we go too far, if you've watched Chapter 3 in my series, which I hope you have, you'll know that this hypothetical songwriter here, by choosing the key of C to work with, the songwriter is also limited to a specific set of chords he can work with. So for example, supposing that you're in the key of C, we have a C major chord that we can use as a background chord, C, E, and G. We have a D minor chord, D, F, and A. We have an E minor chord, E, G, and B. Now I'm going to pause right here. I wouldn't expect you to know this off the top of your head, that's okay. But if you've watched the previous videos, this might be information that might ring a bell somehow. And certainly we'll follow up on this in future videos. So we have a C major chord, a D minor chord, an E minor chord. Remember, chords are groups of 3 or more notes. F, A, and C makes an F major chord. These are all chords a songwriter could use to support the melody. G, B, and D, that's a G major chord. A, C, and E, an A minor chord. And B, D, and F, which is kind of a weird half-diminished chord. Doesn't show up that often in pop music, popular music, rock, folk, country, blues, bluegrass. So we'll set that chord aside. But the bottom line is the songwriter has chosen a key to work with. And that key, now that we're in a certain key, we have certain melody notes to choose from, and we have certain chords to choose from to back up those melody notes. Now, some of you who are music theory geniuses out there, you're thinking to yourself, well, there's a lot of exceptions to everything that the guy just said. Yes, there are exceptions to all this stuff, but this is for music theory for guitarists who probably are just getting their feet wet, just learning all this stuff for the first time, so I'm keeping it simple and straightforward, so don't yell at me and say, well, but what about X, Y, and Z? Okay, we're keeping things straight and simple with our music theory lesson today. Okay, now back to melody, because that's what we're here for, right? Chapter 4 here, music theory for guitarists. The theme is major scale melody. So the songwriter has a major scale to work with, and what can happen? Well, for the fun of it, I'm going to show you a famous song. We can play Name That Tune. I'll show you a famous song that begins on the note C and moves up C, D, E, F, then moves back down the scale, F, E, D, C, and then it goes C, D, E, E, D. Now don't worry, you don't have to memorize all that stuff, but just to give you an example of how a melody not only is drawn from a major scale, but in this particular instance, here's a famous tune that literally walks up, about halfway up this scale and halfway down again. Okay, name this tune. Here it comes again. Okay, you know what that tune is, right? Bill Withers, Lean on Me, fantastic tune. Thank you, Mr. Withers, for writing such a great tune, which helps me illustrate how a major scale can turn into a melody. So I played C, C, D, E, F, F, E, D, C, C, D, E, E, D. Okay, and hopefully for a lot of you out there, you thought, I know that tune, I've heard that somewhere. It's the melody and the introduction to Lean on Me by Bill Withers. A great tune. If you don't own that tune already, go find some way to get that tune into your library. Fantastic tune. Okay, so there's an example of how we start with a major scale, and Bill Withers chose to make a melody in a very linear, sequential way, marching up, halfway up the scale and halfway back down again. In my fantasy, he was teaching piano lessons to a student and wanted to write a little melody to help that student learn scales, or to encourage that student, or to motivate that student to master scales. I'm sure that's not the case, but as a music teacher, that's what I want to imagine. Okay, Bill Withers, born on the 4th of July, by the way, kind of cool. Born on the 4th of July. Okay, so here's another example of a famous tune, and again, we'll play Name That Tune. In this particular case, it starts on this high C, one octave above this C. By the way, that word octave, OCT, octave, means 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That's what an octave is known as. Sometimes you hear a singer described as having a 3-octave range. That means a singer can sing all of those notes plus 8 more, right? It's not me. Okay. So, the song I'm about to play for you, think, I'm going to do one clue, think Christmas time. I'm going to start on this C, and in this case I'm going to literally work my way right down to this C to show you how a famous melody not only comes from a major scale, but literally is a major scale moving in kind of a reverse sequence. Name this tune. I'll do it again. You know that tune, right? I'll tell you the name in a second. So literally I played C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. And of course those are the first 8 notes of, name that tune, Joy to the World, right? Merry Christmas everybody, Joy to the World. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, many tunes, the vast majority of the tunes that we typically hear on a day-to-day basis are based, the melodies are based on a major scale. Those 2 examples we just did, Joy to the World, and before that, Lean on Me by Bill Withers, are examples of famous melodies that really are drawn right from the exact scale sequence. So you get the idea, right? Okay, so we're about to wrap up here. I want to give you an idea of how major scales relate to what we hear all around us. Okay, so if you've watched the first few chapters of my music theory for guitarists videos. Now you have a sense for what a melody means in terms of major scales. By the way, in case you have a guitar teacher who encourages you to play scales on a regular basis, major scales, minor scales, all that work playing scales from your home practicing, of course, has tons and tons of benefits, one of which is you'll improve your ability to play melodies up and down the neck of the guitar, because as you see here, scales and melodies are really intertwined. Melodies come from scales, okay? All right, everybody, I think that's all I have to say for Chapter 4 here. Again, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel page already, I encourage you to do that. There's information down below. Once you're on that page, if you're so inclined, you're welcome to make a donation. Just look in the upper corner where there's a PayPal button to click on, and anything you can afford, I sure would appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and stay tuned for more chapters in this series on music theory for guitarists. Thanks for watching, everybody.